Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. And today we kick off the draft profiles and we have to go Swede. So we start with Leo Carlsson. Tony Ferrari comes on. We're going to break down Leo Carlsson's game, his strengths, his weaknesses, and why he might be a good fit for the Sharks, who are destined to be picking in the top 5. So all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, JD Young, contributor at Fear the Fin, RIP, and San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can watch this on YouTube as well. And we are joined by bald superstar, international superstar, who has come down to hang out with us mere peons, Tony Ferrari. How is it going, buddy?
Not too bad, just hanging out with the Hollywood elite of being a superstar on local Canadian news. It's a good time.
Yes, I mean your star is rising. You're on, covering the World Juniors. Yes, I mean soon I'm gonna have to go through an agent to get you on the podcast, and even then it's gonna be once, and you're probably gonna blow me off anyway.
Yeah, I was this close to not even showing up today, just to pull a diva move.
It would be a very power move to just go full I'll do it, and then just not show up, and then just block me or something like that. That would be really sad. But no, Tony's here. We're starting the draft profiles. If you guys are new to Locked On Sharks, or new kind of just finding us, I think we do it the best out of anybody else on the podcast. We dive in one episode for one guy. We look at their strengths, we look at their weaknesses, why they would be a good pick for the Sharks. And then I have Tony in blood oath tell me where he's going to go. And then I'm also going to have Tony pick the best non-Bedard player in the draft class. But before we get into that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you guys by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, Leo Carlsson. So let me pull up the fun little graphic here I made. He's a center. He plays in the SHL for Örebro. He's good. 6'3", 194 pounds. In 30 games this year, he has 5 goals, 12 assists with 39 shots on goal. I know those numbers don't look like you're like, oh, okay, whatever. But what he's doing in the SHL is we haven't really seen, especially for a guy his age, right, Tony?
Yeah, that's the big thing is while we've seen it a few times in terms of the elite talent, it's not been very often that we do see it. I think we look at guys like Marcus Naslund, who's put up numbers like this, and what Leo Carlsson's doing at such a young age, and he played there last year as well. It's really impressive because he's 6'3", he has the size, he skates really well. There's so many things that he does, and he projects to center as well. And that's the big thing I think that you're looking for with Carlsson is he going to be a center at the next level? I think this draft has a number of guys that will be centers at the next level. And Leo Carlsson's one of the best 2 or 3 that's in this draft class.
So what does he do so well? What makes him such a premier kind of cream of the crop type of prospect?
He blends power, speed, and skill unlike anybody else in this draft class, outside of maybe Adam Fantilli. I think that's the big thing with him is you look at the way he's able to kind of deke one defender with a skill move, putting the puck through the defender's leg, and then putting the other defender on his back as he gets to the goalie. And then he's got maybe the best hands in tight in the entire draft class and able to score in tight. And it's just so many times you see him split defenders and do stuff like that. You saw him at the World Juniors score 2 really big goals against Finland in the quarterfinals in a game that, quite frankly, Sweden was completely outplayed, and he was probably their best player in that game. And even throughout the tournament, he was one of their better players. So it's so much more about him kind of doing more than what you expect at this age. So many times as a 17-year-old at the U20 tournament, you see a guy have flashes, good moments, but to be dominant the way he was at times, and it went a little overshadowed by Bedard doing what he did, but the way Carlsson was able to be one of Sweden's best players, it went understated, and he was just absolutely fantastic from start to finish.
And yeah, I mean, I'm going to name drop here, but I had Philip Easted on. He talked about how Carlsson was under the weather for most of the tournament. You know, he missed a game, and he was still producing like that. And again, so you hope that maybe like when he's healthy, continues to fill out his body. Like you can kind of see why he's going to be a special type of talent for whoever team drafts him. You know, he's kind of, I think most places have him ranked 3 behind. Bedard, of course, is number 1. Fantilli, number 2. It kind of feels like one of the best consolation prizes in recent draft history, right? If you don't get one of those top 2 picks, picking Leo Carlsson at 3 or 4, like you're probably walking away with a really amazing player, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think with this draft class, you obviously have Bedard as the generational talent up top, but then you have guys like Fantilli and Carlsson right behind him who, in a lot of years, they'd be battling it out for number 1 as those 2 guys. I think in a lot of years, Fantilli would go number 1 and Carlsson would be pretty much the clear-cut number 2, and I think that's what makes him the top 3 guy that I have him on my board, and a lot of places have him on their boards. And it's because he's able to separate himself from the pack. I think so many guys in this draft class have done really, really well, but they all have kind of a glaring weakness, whether it's Michkov's inability to kind of play translatable hockey, or a guy like Zach Benson just being 5'9" at the end of the day. You got a guy like Leo Carlsson who's 6'3", skates really well, has the skill, has the power, can kind of play that grinding role, play a physical role, while also being able to skill it up and absolutely dangle guys. It's not often you get that blend in that true top 6 center and that true possible top line center. So I think that's the big thing with Carlsson is he does so many things well, and there really isn't a glaring weakness.
All right, so we'll get into the weaknesses here in just a minute. I do want to take a quick moment, though, to talk to you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel, great right now, especially for we're in like deep into the playoffs right now. We have the conference championships this weekend, and then 2 weeks, of course, we have the Super Bowl. Really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the number 1 sports book in America, FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, it's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers, join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. If you think the Niners win this weekend, I think a Niners money line plus Christian McCaffrey touchdown makes a lot of sense to me. So on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports book partner of the NFL. All right, so Leo Carlsson, you said he doesn't have many weaknesses. I talked to Scouch a couple weeks ago, and he said Fantilli and Carlsson could probably actually learn a lot from each other's game. And so what do you think is kind of the one thing that Carlsson needs to work on to maybe reach that potential first-line center ceiling?
I think the big thing with Carlsson is he needs to continue working on his defensive game. I certainly don't think it's a major weakness, but just kind of being in the right spot, understanding how to play the smart two-way game that most centers need to play at the next level is the big thing for him to work on. And then just getting a little bit faster in terms of top speed. I think that's the big thing with his game, is that he's got he's pretty agile on his feet. He's a good skater for a guy his size, but he's not that elite upper tier skater. And I think that's kind of the differentiating factor between him and Fantilli. I think there's so many times where Fantilli plays a little bit safer, a little bit more of a translatable offensive game, and then bust out the creativity when needed. Whereas Carlsson will bust out the creativity a little bit more often. And it could just be because he's able to do it a little bit more often at the SHL level, just kind of being in that Swedish game where the physicality isn't necessarily as high as it is in North America, as so many people complain about the European game. But he's still playing against
God, I hate watching cool people do cool things.
I know, right? It's like
the worst.
How horrible would it be watching Leo Carlsson center aligned with William Eklund on it? That'd be just terrible.
Yes. Why have cool people do cool things? So
exactly, right? It's one of those things where he does so many things well that the biggest thing you need him to do is just grow up a little bit, I think, and kind of mature. I think that's the biggest thing with Carlsson's game. He's so smart, so cerebral offensively. He has no problem attacking a defender head on, and that's the big thing you look for in so many guys at this age is they've got the ability to deke and dangle to the outside. Even the guys that are bigger and more physical, they tend to cut to the outside. Carlsson doesn't do that. He's going right down the middle of the ice and trying to score on the goalie right from the crease.
All right. So what do you think is his absolute ceiling type of player? And what do you think is kind of the most likely outlook for Carlsson when he gets to the NHL?
I think the absolute ceiling is like a Matt Sundin light. I think that's kind of the mold he's built in, where he's able to kind of be a powerful guy, use his shot from kind of the high danger areas, gets those areas pretty easily, and kind of carry a line. Is he going to be that elite top line center? Maybe not, but I think he's going to be a really good top line center. And if he doesn't get to that point, maybe he's just a really high end second line center. I think you look throughout the league and there's so many guys that he could kind of fit that mold in. But I think being the physical presence is the kind of the differentiating factor for him. You don't see many offensive physical centers in today's game in the NHL. So he's a bit of a unicorn in that sense, but kind of him and Adam Fantilli both bring that aspect.
So Mike Greer is going to love him, a big guy who can skate and is physical as well. So we've seen the Sharks have not scared the past 3 drafts, right? Their first round pick, William Eklund, Sweden. Philip Beested, kind of a little bit of a, people might say a reach, but so far so good with Beested. I think he's played really well so far in the SHL. I think the World Juniors was kind of a coming out party for him. A lot of us, kind of seeing him more, kind of more available. And Beested, I thought was, you mentioned Carlsson. I think Beested, you could make a rightful claim was Sweden's best player in the tournament. I mean, he won the best player of the tournament from Sweden. The Sharks dipping back into the Swedish pool. We know Mike Greer likes Swedes and he likes NCAA players. So, I mean, where would Carlsson fit in the Sharks prospect pool that's been kind of coming along over here the past couple of years?
I think he'd probably be the best prospect in the pool. I think the only guy to really push him would be William Eklund, and I kind of expect Eklund to graduate next year, be in the NHL a little bit more full time, and get a real run with the team. But I think those two kind of forming a dynamic duo for the Sharks over the next couple of years, if that is the pick, would be really, really interesting because their play styles would blend so well together. Leo Carlsson is such a center-driven player. He loves to kind of attack the middle, just wreak havoc in the slot. And like I said, he's got the best, in my opinion, Bedard, Fantilli included, the best hands in the draft within 5 feet of the net. So I think that's kind of the differentiating factor for him. And then with William Eklund's ability to kind of drive play from the wing and be that playmaker that could be lethal with a guy like Leo Carlsson, I think those two on a tandem would be outstanding together.
Oh, be still my Swedish heart. So, all right. So, we've talked about kind of what his ceiling is. Worst case, you're getting a very, very high end second line type of player for him. What's his kind of timeline? No, he's in Sweden right now. He's probably going to be in Sweden for the next couple of years. What do you think is kind of the timeline before he is making an impact in the NHL?
Well, I think Bedard's obviously going to jump to the NHL next year. I think Leo Carlsson's maybe the next most ready prospect out of the group. I think he could join the NHL next year if he really wanted to and be a legitimate impact third line center, second line center, in especially on this Sharks team where you look at the depth chart and you have Couture, you have Hurdle there down the middle, but you don't really have much else around the edges. And I think you could include him on the wing. You put Carlsson on the wing and put him with one of those two guys and get him some top 6 minutes, or you allow him to kind of be insulated on that third line and work his way into the NHL. At the end of the day, I do think he's probably going to spend at least 1 more year in Sweden. I think then you kind of have that William Eklund effect where Eklund did play right away for a bit and then went back over. I think you just leave Carlsson over in Sweden for 1 more year, bring him over after that year and see where he's at, because at that point, I think he'd certainly be ready to step into the Sharks lineup and not only play serviceable minutes, but be a real impact player.
So, I mean, you're thinking maybe next year, 2 years from now, he's ready to go in the NHL, which is kind of weird because the past couple of drafts has been very much like, Probably a couple years, type of thing. We don't really, even the guys who, we didn't really see anybody kind of make a big impact in this year's draft. And then, Shane Wright got sent back. Like, I know, some guys kind of hung around, but we haven't really seen that recently, just because I think maybe the draft qualities haven't been as good in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor. I think this 2023 draft is probably the best draft we've seen at least since 2019. But the top end of this draft, especially the top 3 to 5, you have a real legitimate case at going back to that 2016 draft where Austin Matthews was taken, Patrick Laine, and then Pierre-Luc Dubois after that. And I think you could have kind of a trio like that where realistically you could have the top 3 guys if you're going Bedard, Fantilli, and Leo Carlsson all stepping into the NHL next year and being legitimate NHLers right away. Do I think all 3 of them take the step? No, probably not. I think Bedard's going to be there, obviously, because he absolutely has nothing to do in junior hockey at this point. But
did Bedard score average 3 points a game in junior hockey next season?
how many more points can this kid get? He's already going to put up 140, 150, and then probably top 60 goals on the year. But then you have Adam Fantilli, a guy that I think could step into the NHL next year. But you look at what Buffalo did with Owen Power, where they let him stay at Michigan one more year, bring him in toward the end of the year, get his feet wet, and then let him take a full season in his D+2. I think that'd be the smart thing with Fantilli as well. And Carlsson kind of fits that same mold. Let him go back to Sweden for a year. You don't need him. You're not trying to win next year. You're not looking to take over and be a contender. Don't rush the kid. I think that's always the biggest thing with these prospects. While I think all 3 of them could, there's no point in doing it, especially if you're a team like the Sharks.
All right, before we kind of maybe talk some bigger draft stuff here, we have Tony donate blood as we get his answers. Do want to let you guys know about the Locked On Sports Today podcast. So thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. We do second listen. Go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. They've got you covered with all the biggest stories in sports. They got their take of the day. So guys, make sure you guys check them out wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right. So we talked a lot about these kind of top 3 guys, Fantilli, Carlsson, and then Bedard. We'll get plenty of draft profiles for these guys coming up here. But who are some other guys that you're kind of, for a team like the Sharks that are probably, I think they're 5th right now in the old Tankathon standings. They're probably going to be in around that spot by the end of the season. Who are some other guys to maybe kind of keep an eye on?
I think the wild card is Matvei Michkov, the guy, the Russian guy that everyone thought was going to be the surefire number 2 before the draft year. But I think between all the issues with Russia, and I don't think that really plays a factor for me in terms of my evaluations, but the Russian factor is going to be a thing this year as it was last year, and it seems to always be, but more so the last couple of years. But the fact of the matter is he's not quite playing at as high a level as we all thought he would be. He's a guy that settles for shots from the outside. He scores a lot from it because in Russia, the goaltending and the defensive structure just isn't there. And he's able to kind of getting away with playing beer league hockey almost. He plays a very untranslatable style. It's not a pro game really at all. He displays the skill. His shot is unreal. I think that's the biggest thing is you look at everything that he does and you're like, yeah, all this should make a really good hockey player. But it just doesn't get put together in terms of a realistic good hockey player in the NHL and in the pro ranks over here. So I think that he's the wild card. He could obviously be the Sharks pick if they're in that 5 to 6, 7 range, because if he falls that far, the upside is tantalizing. But I think you have other guys like Will Smith, Ryan Leonard, and Oliver Moore from the USNTDP who've absolutely been tearing it up. Will Smith's maybe one of the funnest players to watch. He's got some of the best hands in the entire draft class and one of the silkiest smooth playmakers in the draft class as well. Really good center. I think he's going to play center at the next level, and he does so many things well. His defensive game is non-existent almost, but you got time to work on that over the next couple of years. He's going to be going to college, and that's kind of where you let him work on that. Ryan Leonard, power forward winger, the guy that he's not the biggest guy, but he plays 3, 4, 5 inches bigger than he is. He'll put a guy down just by driving through them with his shoulder and then finishing in tight. He's so good off the puck. He's an excellent complement to Will Smith. I call them the Thunder and Lightning duo for that team, where Will Smith's all the flash and flair, and Ryan Leonard's kind of the finish, the physicality on that line, and he does a really, really good job there. And then you have Oliver Moore, who's the fastest, one of the shiftiest players in the entire draft class. I think he's so fun to watch, and he's anchored that NTDP second line with a lot less talent than that first line has, and he's put up numbers pretty comparable. So I think those are two guys as well. And then you have some guys that are undersized. Zach Benson, Andrew Cristall, both out west. But the big thing is there isn't really a defenseman in this group. And I think that's kind of where the Sharks would love to add a really premier prospect. But the next kind of guy is Axel Sandin-Pellikka or Mikhail Gulyev or Dmitry Simashev. And they're all kind of at the back end of the top 10, maybe just outside the top 10. The other guy I'd kind of include in that conversation is Edward Chalet. We've seen him so many times at the international events for Czechia, being really, really solid. He's just a really smart player, plays with speed, understands how to play the game at a really high level. You're not worried about too many holes because he's got the work ethic to kind of get through them and work and get by in little defensive laps of his. He'll get back on the puck and do what he needs to do. So there's a lot of talent in this draft class. And I think realistically, you have 20 guys that could be top 10 picks realistically. And I think they'd be like legitimate top 10 picks.
Oh, wow. That's good to hear. So, I mean, I know the Sharks you got your eyes on the prize with Bedard, but there's plenty of consolation kind of potential picks here. And I'm sure we'll have you back on for plenty more profiles. And looking at some of those, if the Sharks get another first round pick or their second pick, if that makes sense. I 100% can believe that they're going to be taking a defenseman there, especially after trading Ryan Merkley. That defense, that blue line prospect pool needs some injection of talent there. And I know they picked Havlin last year, and he's been hurt for a majority of the year and starting to get back into it in the SHL here. But yeah, I think they need some more injection. They just need some more bodies there that you can, kind of throw and hope that somebody will stick at some point. So, all right. I drew your blood. You didn't realize it. We asked 2 blood questions. So the first question is, this one's probably going to be really easy. Where does Leo Carlsson go in the draft?
3rd overall, I think. That's the reason I'm going to go.
No, this is not as much intrigue this year with like that. It's who gets the picks, right? It's not who's going where. It's the intrigue of who gets the actual picks. So, and then the second question is 5 years from now, I'm still doing this podcast for some reason. Locked On hasn't kicked me off. The non-Bedard class, who's the best player out of the draft?
Adam Fantilli. I think he has a chance to be a truly elite center, a guy that plays an underrated defensive game. I think he's maybe the best defensive center in this draft, on top of being the second or third best offensive player in this draft behind Bedard. I think there's so many things that he's going to do at the NHL level that are just going to translate so incredibly well. I think you watched him at the World Juniors, and yeah, he started a little slow, and he didn't get the top 6 role that so many people were hoping he was going to get, but he embraced that bottom 6 role, and he was maybe Canada's best bottom 6 forward. He scored a couple big goals as the games got bigger, and he really was a pivotal member of that team, and I don't think they win the gold medal without him.
Yeah, I mean, Fantilli's pretty good too. So, you wonder, like, is he just going to be like Matty Beniers, but better? I guess is kind of the comparison. Yeah. So, because
that's the thing with
Fantilli. Matty Beniers was awesome at Michigan, and he's been killing it for the Kraken this year. And is it just Matty Beniers 2.0?
Yeah, that's the thing with Fantilli. You have so much upside offensively with that defensive game. And I think he doesn't play the kind of same speed game that Beniers plays, but he understands that defensive game that is so important. We've seen Beniers come in and be a legitimate, solid 2-way center for the Kraken almost immediately. And I think Fantilli is going to kind of make that same impact when he gets to the NHL.
Man, this draft is going to be so much fun. All right, Tony, you've come and said it all. Where can the people find you? What movies are you filming? What do you have coming on next? So
you can follow me at the Hockey News. All my work's there. You can follow me on Twitter at the Tony Ferrari. Make sure to check out the OHL podcast I do with Brock Otten. We cover everything in the OHL as well for the Hockey News and all my draft stuff. I've got my rankings from just before the World Juniors pinned to my Twitter profile. So if you want to check those out there, they're a little outdated, but you can always ask me questions. I'm happy to answer them.
All right, Tony, thank you so much. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at MyFryHole, where I make terrible jokes. You can find the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Listen wherever you get podcasts, and of course, watch on YouTube. Until tomorrow, friends. Bye.